Welcome to Milton King's On the Wall podcast, where we engage in conversations with artists, designers, and more. We learn about their stories from their insights and success to their hardships. Today, we speak with Bethany Linz, an Australian artist and designer of wallpaper and textiles. We hope you enjoy this conversation. If you do, please leave a rating and review. So we're here with Bethany Linz. Do you prefer Bethany or Beth or?
I go by Beth.
Go by Beth. Okay, so we can keep it casual.
Keep it cash.
So you're located in Sydney, is that right? Or is it Newcastle?
I was born in Newcastle and I moved to Sydney when I was 22, I think. So I've been here for almost half my life.
Did you have artistic parents?
Very artistic mother, and she's a stay-at-home mum. So I was very lucky for that because she stayed at home creating the most amazing craft. I worked with craft with us every day. We painted every day, made candles, and I was very fortunate that they were very open-minded to send us to a Steiner school. Which I don't know if you know what a Steiner school is, Chris.
I did look that up because I was, doing my research. I saw that you did say that you went to a Steiner school. I'm familiar with Montessori, but I don't know much about Steiner. But I know that they're somewhat similar, but there are differences. Maybe you can fill me in on what those differences are.
Well, one is Montessori it's from Italy. I know that. Steiner, I think, is either Austrian or Swiss, but it's all about developing the child's imagination when they're younger, not making them learn, like sit down at a desk too soon. It's all about looking at nature for inspiration. And saying that, every Steiner school is slightly different. So this is the Steiner school I went to. So it was all about learning languages to start with too, before learning to read and write. So we did a lot of German. We played instruments, worked a lot in the garden, which I loved, and lots of art and craft. It was a very creative school, and I just bloomed there. I loved it.
So was that Steiner education, was that something that was just in early years, or was that all through, would that be through grade 12? Is it normal grades?
Yes, it's normal grades. And I stayed all the way through because I was very creative and I just suited the school really well. My sister and brother, they ended up going to other schools to finish their education, but I stayed there and I really enjoyed it.
So do you just have you have one sister, one brother?
I have one sister and two brothers.
Okay, so where do you fall in that line of?
I'm second born.
Okay.
For a while I was the middle child, so I'm the easy breezy, easygoing child. And when I was 14, my mother had my youngest brother. It was a bit of a surprise, but it was the best thing that ever happened to us. We all had a beautiful baby to love and enjoy in the family. Yeah.
So you weren't threatened?
No, not at all. No. No, we're all way too old.
So what was it like growing up in Newcastle? I mean, how far is that above Sydney, would you say?
It's about, now with the new tunnel, it's about an hour and a half up the coast.
Oh, that's not too far. So does it feel like it's very disconnected from city life? Does it feel more farmy, or what is it like in Newcastle? Or it's on the beach though, isn't it?
It's on the beach. It's still considered a city. Originally it's very working class. It was all based around the coal and the BHP. But it's very much a surfy city. The coastline is really beautiful. So there's lots of surfers there. Lots of artists, and lots of tradies. I do find that lots of my friends, lots of the younger people do tend to move away to the bigger cities to find work. But lots end up going back to raise a family because it's a lot more affordable.
Yeah.
I've decided that I love Sydney way too much. And my whole family.
So you wouldn't go back?
No. My husband would love to, but
would he?
My whole family's down here now. I even have a brother that lives on the same street as me with his kids that are the same age as mine. So it'd be a bit silly to move back. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're married. How long have you been married for?
I met my husband when I was 19 and he was 21. So, and I got married at 30. So we knew each other
Oh,
for a
so you
long
had a
time.
fairly long courtship there.
Yes, very long. Um, so yeah, I've been married for almost 8 years this November.
Wow.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
thanks. It's flown by. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you have a little one on the way.
I have my third child on on the way. We've got two boys, and this one was a bit of a surprise. We weren't planning on
Okay.
having another one, but it's a little girl, so I'm very, very excited.
Oh, the first girl, right? Because
First
the other two
girl.
are the two boys, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
And that's Hugo and Noah, is that right?
That's right. Yes.
So after you went through the Steiner education, was it straight into uni or did you have any time off?
Um, well, through the middle of year 12, I was experiencing some really bad health conditions. Um,
Oh no.
but we didn't know for years what was wrong with me, but I'd have to go to sleep at 7 o'clock at night. So I couldn't finish year 12. So the next step for me, and I only ever loved art. I always knew what I wanted to do. And there's an amazing art campus in Newcastle, top of town, that was just really, it was part of the TAFE school, and it was separated from everything else. It was part of an old, amazing museum, Victorian style building with stuffed animals. It was so visually beautiful. The teachers were some of the best artists in New South Wales. And I got in there, and it was just one of the best experiences of my life.
So just curious, if you let's say spoke to your younger self that was saying, when I grow up I want to be an artist,
Hmm.
would you have in mind what your life is like now? Did you have a clear understanding of this is
No,
what it's going to be?
no.
This is the life of an artist that I am dreaming of?
No, and I was just talking to my husband the other day about our kids and their education, and I think it's really important to talk about like there's so many options within different areas of work. Like for example, art. You don't just study art and become an artist. I mean, I wouldn't be making no money if that was the case.
Right.
But there's so many different avenues you can go down. Like graphic. You can go into theatre. You can do backdrops. You can do wallpaper and textiles, which is what obviously I'm doing and absolutely love. Um, but yeah, if I went back to my former self, I'd go just continue on the path. You're doing the right thing. Because going through Steiner, we did a lot of textiles. We looked at William Morris and the pre-Raphaelite artists, so
Hmm.
that gave me a really good understanding of textiles and repeats and everything. But the
Yeah, that's a
taste.
whole other consideration, isn't it, when you're an artist to
Mm,
you're not just whatever it is drawing a portrait or a picture of something, you're having to keep in mind how is this going to connect
mm-hmm.
into a repeatable pattern.
Exactly. And that some people just can't get that. It's something that I think, and it can be hard to explain. I think it either comes
Hmm.
naturally or it doesn't. And luckily for me, it's come quite naturally.
So now I'm guessing that because you're doing wallpaper designs and things like that, you have that sort of in mind when you put paintbrush to canvas.
I do. I like to work very organically, though. I don't like to have an obvious repeat. So I'll start off by, firstly, the first thing I'll do is get inspiration on a collection and have an idea of where I want to go with it. And then I'll come up with like visual inspirations of like motifs and paintings and artists. And like the latest one that's not out yet, but I'm very excited about it, is all based on chinoiserie and Chinese art.
Hmm.
And I knew
I've
that
seen a little bit of it,
you've
and
seen a
it's
little bit.
beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm quite proud of it because I've had to do it with two kids around me on the kitchen table painting. And yeah, it was quite nerve-wracking, but very rewarding in the end. But
So do you find that when you're painting like that, are you so do you not I'm guessing because of the children you're not able to, but is your process to or at least is your attempt in the beginning your intention to go into a room and be able to paint, or is it kind of because you have the children you're just like you said painting in the kitchen and
yeah.
just painting whenever you get five
Well,
seconds to
I do have them in daycare 2 days a week. So I use that time as much as I can. And I have a studio, but when it comes to painting these large panels that I've had to do for the chinoiserie collection, I've had to put them on the large kitchen table. And when if they're having like a quiet time at home through the week and I feel like I just need to paint, I'll get it out and quickly do it. And then because I work with gouache, gouache is fantastic. It's kind of like a powdered form paint. So it
Mm-hmm.
dries on very quickly, but it's very easy to manipulate again once it's dried on the plate. You can just add water and the color comes back. So it's not like oil paint that you have to set up and it smells and you get it everywhere. And then when the kids come home, you have to pack everything up because it'll just get everywhere. Gouache is fantastic. You can just pop it aside, and if I touch it, you just wash their hands. So I just tend to get it out when I need to. If I have like half an hour here, half an hour there, I'll just, pull the paper out and paint away.
So do you find yourself having to sort of, for lack of a better term, sort of close up shop at some point and put everything away because you you don't want to make the house a mess? But I would,
Yeah.
but then in doing that, do you find it hard to kind of get started sometimes ever? Because you do have to go through that step of, okay, I need to go here, instead of it just kind of being out and you can kind of go to it at any point,
Yeah, it
having to
is
open it
hard.
up.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
to be honest, it actually all depends on the flow of the house as well because my studio is upstairs and I'm downstairs most of the time with the children. When we're living in Melbourne recently, everything was on one level, so I could just run into the studio, do a quick painting, or being on the computer work takes up half of the time as well. So just quickly get on the computer, do 10 minutes or even half an hour, you'd get some work done while the kids were having lunch or something. But now I can't do that. I have to make as much time as I can, make the most of the time that they're at daycare. So,
Do you
and
have like a daily schedule where you go? Because some people would say, especially in the arts, I guess,
mhm.
you're set it an hour a day no matter what, or 10 minutes a day no matter what. Do you find that you have to be regimented in sort of forcing yourself, or because is it too easy to just say, "Oh, I'll finish that tomorrow," or "I'll get to it tomorrow," or do you find yourself creating a regiment for yourself to be productive as an artist?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I must admit, this is my getaway, my work. It's what keeps me sane. So it's not like something I have to make myself do. It's something I'm busting to do. So if the kids go to bed early, I'll jump on the computer and do some
Mm-hmm.
work. Um, but no, I think also because I work for myself, and I mean, I can just give you guys a collection whenever I want, really. I don't really
Mm-hmm.
have time frames, except for this latest collection, obviously, with a baby almost due. I've got 2 weeks. I've just
Yeah.
got it all finalized. So I did have a pretty strict time frame for this one, but
Because you pretty much know that you're not going to
I'm
really
not.
be able to devote
No,
much time
no.
for a
And
while.
whenever I have a baby, for some reason, I have people asking for custom work. This time round, I'm going to say no. I'm taking 6 months off to just
Yeah.
enjoy this baby and survive, I guess, survive three
That's
children.
really great that you can do that.
Oh,
That's
I
really
am.
nice.
I am really lucky. Very, very lucky. And that's looking back when I was in my 20s, that's what I wanted to achieve in my 30s is to have my work set up where I can enjoy royalties while I have
Mm-hmm.
children and be able to be there for them, but also be working at the same time. So
Yeah.
I've got the best of both lives, really.
So
I'm
you're
very,
you're
very
on
lucky.
you're on the right track
I
in
am on
that
the right.
sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think maybe this might interest other artists is, something that maybe they wouldn't necessarily realize. And I know this sort of gets into the business of things, but it's obviously important. But the fact that you're able to, when you talk about royalties, essentially you're creating passive income to where you put in the work. And then once it's kind of done, you're actually able to sit back
Yeah. Yeah.
and sort of do nothing. I mean, not nothing, but like you can promote yourself, you can do all sorts of things, but you can actually continue to make some sort of income from that art that you created, as people keep, buying the rolls of
Hmm.
wallpaper and things like that. So you're able to create that what they call passive income.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I could just sit back now and just enjoy the royalties, but I can't just do that. I have to create more.
Right.
But
Yeah. No, it's the artist in you will never let you stop, I
no,
suppose.
exactly. I mean, it's the same with any artist. Your art is therapy, I guess. And if you're achieving good art, it's so rewarding. So
Do you
just
ever
yeah, keep
find
going.
that, do you ever find that, has there ever been let's say spans maybe when it was when you were having Hugo or Noah, did you ever find that, or maybe it has nothing to do with giving birth or anything like that, but has there ever been times where, let's say, weeks or months have passed because you say the art's like therapy. Has Do you find it affecting your mood? Do you find it affecting? Yeah, I guess just like your. Can you Do you find yourself getting into a bit of a depression if you're not painting that after so many weeks or months? Do you feel like, oh, I need this because it is actually therapy for me. It is helping my mood or my outlook or the way I feel today.
I think so. And I can remember after I had my first child, I went to my GP and I broke down crying because he was so difficult and obviously hormonal as well. She said, "You're a
Mm-hmm.
creative person. Have you been doing any art?" And I'm like, "I only had him for 6 weeks. When when would I have had time to do any art?" But she said everyone she knew who was creative had to keep going to stay sane. And she's right. When I had my second one, he was a lot easier. And obviously it wasn't as much of a shock to the system. But I had Magnolia Interiors in Brisbane asked me to do a lots of custom work, and I thought, oh my God, how am I going to do this? But doing it kind of it kept me working and realizing that I can do both, which made me feel very, very good, and that
Mm-hmm.
it made me feel more confident and made me realize that. And people were like, "How do you do both?" And they even say today with two kids, "How on earth do you achieve this much work?" And it's like, well, it's what I love doing. It is what literally keeps me sane. I don't know how women stay at home looking after children all day. It's one of the hardest things you could possibly do mentally and physically. And I
Right.
think if you have a little treat like art, for me, it's what gets you through the day.
It's great that you see it as a treat like that because I can see how it might be difficult for someone who, I guess, sometimes certain tasks take or use, let's say, a certain side of your brain.
Hmm.
And so, for example, if you're, I don't know, let's say you're doing your taxes at the end of the financial year, and you have your math brain on because you're doing that. It's not really easy to switch from that
No, it
to
isn't.
something artistic. You almost have to get. Do you find that you have to get into like a zone?
Yeah, and like creating a website and putting new collections up on a website, you really have to be in the right headspace to get
Because
that
that's more
right.
technical, isn't it?
It is more technical, and I hate writing about my work. People
Mm-hmm.
ask me, "How do you describe your work? How do you describe
Oh,
this
it's the
design?"
worst.
I'm like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I think someone who hasn't seen it before would be able to describe it a lot better than what I could because I'm too close to it. But
Right.
yeah, I do really struggle when it comes to the writing side of everything. And I mean, the websites are fun. I do enjoy doing it, but I've just switched from Wix to Shopify, and it's doing my brain in. It's
Yeah.
quite difficult.
I guess doing that part of it, and then let's say if you're creating a new piece, bouncing back between those
Hmm.
two parts of your brain is not the easiest thing to do.
No, but luckily, I guess I do it in like I start by being really painterly and really creative, and then I move to the computer. So then it's all computer. I have someone
Okay,
that
so you do separate it a little bit.
I do. I have someone, I mean, while the paint's all set up with the paper, I might as well do the whole collection. And then I have someone in Sydney who captures my artwork with her amazing camera and captures every brushstroke. So it can be blown up to really large murals and it look like it's all hand painted onto the wall.
Hmm.
And so then I work on the computer and Photoshop putting it into repeat. And
Okay, well,
that can take months.
it can take months. Yeah, I
Yeah,
did
it can
want
take
to
months.
actually
Yeah.
ask you a little bit about that because I'm not really familiar with that. I've always wondered how, because for those that don't know,
Hmm.
you hand paint pretty much everything, right?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much everything.
Is there a design that you didn't hand paint?
Well, the marbling collection I just released, I
Well,
did,
that's
yeah,
different.
I did one of those. And then I had someone in Japan create the rest of them because I just didn't have the materials, I guess, and I could have spent a fortune buying the materials and only used them once. But
But for the most part,
for
you're
the
hand
most part,
painting them.
hand paint everything. And
So then to get those from something that's, I guess, what would you call it, like analog sort of or hand painted? How do you get that? you're saying that somebody in Sydney actually just takes a photo of it.
Yeah, she's a professional photographer for artists. She works with some of the best artists in Sydney, and she has an amazing camera. There's only two of them in Australia, and it captures
Oh, wow.
like every brushstroke. So she does that for me, and she creates a file and sends them through, and then I'll have to clean them up, which is, oh, it's so painstaking. I wish I had an assistant for that. You literally have to cut all the background out so you can like create another layer of background, like different textures to the
Hmm.
florals, and change the colorways as well.
So that's how you do the different colors is after you're done painting it, then it gets photographed and then it gets sent back to you to actually create different digital renders
Yeah, exactly.
and colors and
And
things.
colors,
Okay.
yeah, and put them in repeat. And that, most of the time I'm quite lucky because I have an idea in my head how I want the repeat to flow when I'm painting, but I don't have it all set up in block work when I'm painting. Like some people, when they do wallpapers or fabrics, will have a grid system set up already. I don't work like that. I try to be a bit more organic, and once it's in Photoshop, I can fiddle around with the leaves and move them around and make the repeat flow beautifully from there.
How much of a change do you feel like your art goes like how much of a change do you feel like there is between what you initially paint and what ends up being the final product? Do you do a lot of moving around and adjusting when you're like do
Not
you work in
much.
Photoshop or Illustrator or what are you
I
working
work
with
in
when you do?
Photoshop.
Okay.
Um, and not really. Like I might, for example, with the latest chinoiserie collection, I painted all the trees separately. Otherwise, I would have had a piece of paper as big as a wall, and that's not possible. So that I painted it all
Mhm.
in panels, um, and then I painted the birds, the larger birds, like separately. Then I painted the hills separately. Then all of them were photographed, and then I put them all together like a puzzle in in Photoshop. And that can also be really tricky because you want it to look like they were all painted together, not put
Mm.
together in Photoshop. So that can take a little bit of skill and patience. Um, but I try not to let the original artwork change graphically at all when it goes into Photoshop. It's just cutting the background out and changing, how the colors look. You can influence the colors also in the flowers in Photoshop, but I didn't really do that much with this collection. I wanted them to just stay the way that I painted them and just change the background color.
And do you always use did you say it was gouache?
Yeah, I use gouache. It's just easy. It's so
So
easy.
that's what you
And
use for everything that you paint pretty
yeah,
much?
yeah, it's pretty much everything. I mean, I love, like, say if I was doing portraiture, because it's just something I enjoy from my art days. I would love to use oil, but I haven't been able to do
Mhm.
it since I had kids because you can't put it away somewhere where they won't come and touch it, and it takes so
Mm.
long to dry. So gouache, I guess, is just very practical and non-toxic, I guess, when it comes to smell.
And you find it just as easy to work with as any other
Yeah, it's so easy, and you'll find
medium?
most designers use gouache. I felt really good when I read that my favorite wallpaper company, who I aspired to one day be like, Dugone, the French company, they use gouache a lot, so that made me feel a lot better too. They do mostly shin. Do you know Dugone? They do mostly chinoiseries.
Mhm.
They are just amazing, and that's something that I want to be able to bring to the average person, is something that they can afford that's reminiscent of Dugone, that only billionaires, I guess, can afford because it's all hand painted
Right.
onto sheets of paper that you then apply to the wall. It's all original. But
Mhm.
I love the fact that Milton and King do everything digitally printed that capture all the brushstrokes of my work. So when it is applied to a wall, it looks like it's hand painted straight onto a wall,
Right.
and not many people can afford that. So that's something that I've always wanted to achieve, is something that the everyday person can have in their household. It's something that looks
Yeah,
like
it's
it's
great that
hand
you don't have to
painted.
have millions of dollars and have a
Millions,
giant
yeah,
mansion
exactly,
to be able to experience or have that appreciation for someone's art.
exactly.
Um, Getting into a bit of those the collections that Milton King has worked with you on. I think the first one was it was the Aged with Grace
Mm-hmm.
and the children's
Oh, the
one.
children's one, yes.
What did we call that one? It's slipping my mind. Young at Heart. That
Young
was
at
it.
heart, that's right. And I actually asked Bryce. who's the creative director, isn't he? Milton King.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about doing children's collection? It's something I've always wanted to do. And I worked at Mokum, which is an amazing, amazing company in Sydney. So creative, does textiles. But we never did a children's collection. And I was always like, I want to do a children's collection. And Bryce like, oh, I don't really sell, many children's designs. But yeah, give it a go. Anyway, when I created it, he was very excited. And I think it's one of your best sellers, the
Yeah, Animal Kingdom,
Animal
right?
Kingdom. Yeah, yeah. It was very fun
Yeah.
to create.
That was I thought that was a really interesting one because I don't know if I'd ever seen like well, I guess let me kind of dig into your brain a little bit with this one. You essentially, you hand painted it, but you cut out essentially like a collage. You cut out these pieces. Well, let's say for like the Animal Kingdom, you draw a
Mhm.
tree,
Mhm.
and then would you just cut it with scissors
Yeah, like
and
tear it
then just
out.
place it on a
Yeah, like a
background?
collage. Yep. That was really fun actually because it just
So what gave you the
created.
idea for that?
I can't even remember now thinking about it, but I mean, part of my art background, we did a lot of collage work, and I really enjoyed it. Um, I don't
Is
know. I
that the
think
technical term for it? Is it collage
yeah,
work?
collage. It's kind of like layering different images, I guess, and sticking them on top of one another, creating a design. But I don't know. I think just the digital side of printing just opens another world. You could never
Mm-hmm.
do that with screen printing, never. So digital printing, you can capture everything with all the shadows of the collage. So
Yeah, because I mean, you could have easily just drawn a giraffe or whatever, or drawn a
yeah,
zebra, but you chose to draw it, cut it
cut
out,
it
place
out.
it on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it worked really. I think it worked really well with the Sophie's Garden design in that collection, with the
Mm-hmm.
flowers. They really popped, and the bees. That was really fun.
Yeah, people love it.
Oh, good,
They
good.
really do. Um, and then so at the same time, you came out with one called Aged with Grace, which
Mhm.
had the kind of look of almost like an old mural painting on like an ancient rock or something, and had that
Yeah, I wanted to
very
look,
aged and textured
yeah,
look.
I wanted to do something that wasn't so graphic and flat. Um, and it wasn't the most colorful collection. I kind of kept that for the children's range that was launched at the same time. But yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to create something that, yeah, was just textural and layered, but not in the way of a collage is, I guess. But
So when you created the Age with Grace one and you had that old mural look,
mhm.
did you? I'm guessing because you must have a vision from beginning to end. You knew that, or let me ask it this way: so when you're painting it and you're hand painting it, are
Mhm.
you doing anything differently, knowing that it's going to end up with this sort of aged look, or are you? I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, are you painting it and then obviously it gets photographed and then it gets back to you on the computer,
Mhm.
and at that point, I'm guessing is when you did most of the
Yeah.
overlays and textures and things to make it look
Mhm.
aged. Did you do
Mhm.
anything during the painting portion of that was going to be different, or was it
Yeah.
all was the aging portion of it all in the computer essentially?
Well, I painted. I'm just trying to think back to the designs. I'm pretty sure I painted all the designs in just white gouache. So, and kept them kind of layered. You could see through some of them, so they looked like they were aging a little bit. Um, so yeah, it was all in white, no color. So I knew then
Mm.
that I wanted to make it look aged in that respect. Um, and then I walked around to my suburb in Sydney looking for aged walls. This is before I knew about websites like Wall Pixel where you can just easily download a texture. This just
You did
shows
the old
my
school
I did
way.
the old school
You
way.
got out there.
I got out there, I photographed different wall textures, and it took me ages to find the right one. But it was really fun layering them and seeing the different effects that they created. Like without Photoshop, my designs wouldn't be half as good as what they are. Photoshop's just such an amazing tool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, with this collection, yeah, the textures just they all came from local walls, and it was really interesting. And I think because it was like my first ever proper wallpaper collection, because I've come from more of a textile background, I really did want to create something textural, not flat and graphic, because I knew that
Mm-hmm.
the digital printing process would capture everything. So I really made the most of it with this collection.
Was that the first time you had seen your art as wallpaper, or had you done anything like one-offs or anything before where you had seen it before?
I think it was. I think it was the first collection I ever did for wallpaper.
Okay. And
Mm.
so how was that just a
No, hang on a
mind-blowing to
second.
see it?
Yeah, I did do some work with Spark, who've now
Mm.
changed their names, and Emily Ziz.
Mm-hmm.
So Milton and King, they actually approached me like like I was mentioning before with other people when I just had a baby. They approached me and said, "Would you like to do a collection with us?" And I said no twice. I'm like, "No, just had a baby, working with someone else right now." And then Bryce contacted me again 6 months later, like, "Please, you do a collection for us." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I'm so grateful that he chased me because Milton and King have been phenomenal. Like they're just such an amazing company to work for. They let you be creative in your own right, like do whatever you want to do, pretty much. And they've taken me globally as well, whereas the other companies were just Australian. So I
Mm-hmm.
think taking my work globally has made such a huge impact for
Well, there's
me.
such a big market out there. It's just, and now with technology the way that it is, there's no real
Hmm.
reason why you need to, I guess a long time ago, an artist would just sort of be known in their hometown or, and
Exactly.
then their
Yeah.
country. And now you have the reach of, anybody that has an internet connection, really.
Exactly.
Um, so that's pretty cool.
Hmm.
When it came to the next collection you did, I think was that the French collection?
It was
Is
the
that the one that came
French.
after that?
I'm just trying to think. I think it was, and there's a bit of a gap, wasn't there?
Yeah. I always found that one. I was always wondering if you felt intimidated by doing that because I thought it was such a cool concept. Um, for anyone listening that doesn't know, so you created this French collection. It was essentially um, sort of a revival or a new take on a type of art that was happening in the
It's,
1700s when trade was opening
yeah.
up and these exotic things were coming into France and it started to seep
Hmm.
into the culture, into the art of that time. And now, here you are in the 2020s or whatever it is, and you're going to reapproach that whole
Reapproach
idea,
it.
but brand new. How was
Hmm.
that intimidating to do? And did you
Uh,
have all this sort of knowledge already from studying art, or did you have to go back in and research and say, okay, well, what was happening in that time? Like,
hmm.
how did you approach this?
Um, well, I've already approached that period of time before when I worked with Moke and we did a beautiful textile collection. But I kind of looked at that time now, and there are other companies in France that kind of stick to that time and they create the most beautiful wallpapers and stationery. And I'm like, people still love it. It's such a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful time in history. But I love the idea of all these exotic fruits coming through. Like people right now love tropical things. Like they love um, my palm tree wallpapers and things like that. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, if I could try and bring like a more tropical fruit side of that time, because fruit was just so expensive back then, or such a luxury, and they put it all in their
Yeah, people don't
textiles and
understand that
wallpapers.
now. It's really crazy.
No, it is, yeah. Um, so yeah, it was all the designers put them in their wallpapers and textiles. So I love that idea. So that was one of the reasons why I thought it could still be relevant for today. Making it, I mean, what was it? It's Tropicana, that design. I think it's quite popular. And you wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
think it's very like Rococo or classic, but it has a classic feel, yet it's still modern. And I love that about art, trying to create something that's classic, modern, but it's timeless. It's not now. It's not going to be a fad where 5 years time it's no one wants it anymore. I want to create work that's timeless that people will go back to and want to rebuy. So I kind of think reviving that era, it was really inspiring, and I don't know, I don't think it's ever going to really possibly date if you choose the right colors and themes,
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
I guess as a side note, do you ever find it tempting to chase a trend? Or are you always just, you have that long term
Look, I
horizon where
think
you're like,
I think everyone's influenced by them without realizing. Like, you might love a color and all of a sudden it's everywhere and you're like, "Oh, but I love that color." It's like, "Oh, you're you're influenced and you don't even realize it through social media." But
hmm,
yeah, I try to stay away from fads. because what's the point? Everyone does it, right? I want to just stick to
Yeah.
what's true to me, and it might not be everyone's taste, but what is everyone's taste? If you got to just do what you find works for you, and if you know you have a market, you're lucky, I guess.
Do you find yourself paying attention to what's happening in the art world to stay inspired, or do you find yourself sort of closing off as to not be
No,
influenced?
I know I'm very much influenced by what's going on. I mean, I guess that's how I got onto the marbling collection. You see like a bit of a revival with marbling, especially with stationery. You look at Net-a-Porter boxes that you receive, and it's all beautiful marbling. It looks so extravagant and beautiful. And I started seeing on social media, looking at just seeing little things of marbling pop up, like someone would do a random wallpaper in marbling. They're a marbling artist, and they might not be well known, but I've come across them and thought, what a beautiful idea. I could so do that. And it was something for me that was just different. It wasn't another floral, which I love doing, but it was just something that to change the way I thought about art. I thought, oh, I'll do that. It's something I've never done before. And
Hmm.
so that is a good example how I was influenced. I was influenced by social media with that collection, but I brought it to another level. I brought it to, creating a whole collection of wallpapers, which
Yeah.
I'm sure some people have done, but it's not out there that it's not really out there that much at the moment. But I think that's probably the most influence I've been for a collection.
Hmm.
With colors also, I look at Pinterest obviously to see what's popular because you don't want to just do random colors. You really got to look at what's working, what's popular. I get influenced by all the magazines, Vogue Living, what's happening overseas. With this latest collection, I've used a very bright cobalt blue in one of the florals, but that's what some of the most elaborate companies are using around the world in wallpaper, and it just looks beautiful. So I'm like, yes, I'm going to do that because it looks amazing. But I never would have had the confidence if I hadn't have researched other people and got ideas from them, I guess, in terms of colorways that work.
So, what are you just mentioned Vogue Living? Are there,
hmm
do you subscribe to certain magazines that you get delivered to your house that you're kind of always just paying attention to, or how do you
Uh,
stay on top of? Is it just all social media?
it's mostly social media now. I actually get a little bit upset with Vogue Living because it's all overseas. I wish they do more local artists because there's so many amazing talent in Australia, but they really just focus on international artists and interior designers, and they can get a bit
Hmm.
down. And it is a little bit repetitive, but sometimes, I'll pick it up and I'll flick through it. I think that's a good addition. I'll buy it. But no, I haven't subscribed. I do get sometimes a gift, which is an amazing gift for any artist, a subscription, because it just pops up on your door and you don't expect it. And it's
Mm.
lovely to look through to see what's going on. But yeah, it can be a bit down sometimes when you don't see many local people featured in
Yeah, well,
your
I mean, that is
magazine.
one good thing that I guess Milton King has been trying to do is bring, as an Australian company, trying to bring
hmm
Australian artists,
Mm,
New Zealand artists, out to the forefront to really show that there's this talent, this big pool of talent
hmm
out there to recognize.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they've got some amazing people on board now, some really amazing talent. So they've done very well. And yeah, they've done so much for me personally. I'm so grateful.
So for the Marbling collection, so that's the latest one that's live now, and depending on when you're
hmm
listening to this just came out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned that this was something that was not really anything that you had done before, whereas
hmm
you're used to doing, I got landscapes, florals,
Yeah, more
birds, things
botanical.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so how when you said you were influenced by social media a bit, and you saw this sort of style popping up, but you had
hmm
mentioned that you approached a Japanese artist to help you with this. Was this the first time that you had reached out to someone like that?
Yep. It was the first time. And I mean, I knew it was possible because people do it with me all the time. I do custom work for them. But my eldest son and I spent weeks creating marbling. We created so much marbling. And it was really fun and he loved it. He was only 4 at the time. But I only created one design I was happy with because I didn't want to
Hmm.
create something that looked classical. I wanted like really contemporary marbling that looked more like textures and stonework, like marbling and granite that's really popular right now.
Hmm.
And I just couldn't create a clear enough image with the tools I was using, and I didn't want to spend a fortune on doing like buying all the tools because I knew it was only something I'd do over a couple of weeks and I'd be done. So I thought, why don't I just do what everyone else does with me and find someone that could create something for me? And she ended
Mm.
up having a lot of work that she had already created. She'd actually created anything for me after I'd asked her. She just had work that she showed me that I just fell in love with. It was so beautiful. And some of them were colors that I knew would never work in interior. So having to Photoshop them was really fun, but really, really hard
Mm-hmm.
as well. Really hard because you couldn't separate the colors in marbling. Not that I do separate colors really in my other work because it's so painterly, it'd be impossible. But she had a lot of works that she sent through, and I had to try and put some in situ. Some didn't work. Some looked amazing. Some the repeats for marbling, they're so tricky because
I
you
would
have
imagine
to.
that would be really
Oh,
hard to repeat
really, really,
marbling like that.
really hard. And I was just very fortunate that the ones I loved worked. Like my favorite one is the marble swirls. It just looks like swirls of paint on top of
Mm-hmm.
the of water, and that I was very lucky. It could not have worked so easily, but it just did. She had a big enough piece of it that I could use to make a repeat, and then to color that was tricky, but it was also tricky to pick the colors too because there was some that was so beautiful that I just didn't put in the range because they might have been just too over the top. So I had to really try and stick to only a certain amount of colors, which was really tricky. But then there were some designs like confetti was very hard to color, very hard because it is such a small little flecky design that if the color's slightly off, you lose that fleckiness and it becomes flat, and it was really tricky.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a simple collection, but it actually took a long time for me to finish because it was just really tricky collection. Whereas the
So the
big
artist's name
florals,
is it
it,
Itsumi?
Izumi, yes, and she's yes from Japan, and her and her husband were so lovely and so grateful for the collaboration. Even now, they're like such a beautiful collaboration. Thank you so much. They're so grateful. Such lovely people. No
So
ego at
how did
all.
you make that happen? How did you find them?
I
How did
just
you
found
approach
her.
them?
I approached her through Instagram. Instagram's
Oh,
amazing.
okay.
So I just like searched marbling art. Um, there's lots of people in the world that are very talented in doing marbling, but I just saw her work and thought it's just something different. It's a little bit more contemporary and a bit edgy. So I just messaged her through Instagram asking her if she was interested, and her English isn't fantastic, so her husband emailed me and we talked together that way.
Mm.
They were such a lovely couple, and they're so grateful for the collaboration. I'm really excited. And I hope it boosts her workload as well, and she can get more custom work doing it that way. I think she had some more work coming through, but yeah, she deserves it. She was really lovely and very talented.
So I saw that video that you created where you were kind of throwing these. How did you create that? I saw it was looked like you were throwing, I don't know if it's oils or what was it
Yeah, it's
exactly in the water?
so in the water, you have to mix the water with like a it's like a seaweed gel that makes it thick. And then
Mm.
you have like, well, that's the thing. You can use different types of paints. Some artists use like oil-based paints. Some use water-based paints. Um, I had just the water-based paints, and you can get all different droppers. You can get paint brushes that you literally flick the paint onto the surface, and I
Hmm.
love that because when you flick it, you get like really small flickers or big flickers, and the more you apply, the smaller the paint becomes because there's less room to spread, if that makes sense, less surface.
Hmm.
Um, and that's how you create the design pebbles and confetti. And probably the rock one too, the larger one, which is really beautiful, which Izumi created. Um, but then people then go in and they use their paintbrushes or tools to create like the peacock design and different other classical designs that I didn't want to go near because they've been done for centuries. And
Hmm.
I just wanted to stick to the more contemporary, simple designs. I think marble, the marble swirls, which is my favorite. Izumi did use her brush to influence those swirls on the
Okay.
surface, but that's
Almost
the
like
only
swirling it herself with the
yeah,
paintbrush.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Interesting.
I did all that myself with my son, and we did the peacock design, and we did like all the French comb design, and we played around, but I just could not get that clarity that she could get with her professional brushes and
Mm.
her beautiful paints, the quality of her paints that she had. So
So
I
is it safe to
thought,
say that she did the more like analog work and then you did all the digital stuff? Is that kind of
yeah,
how it
yeah,
split?
exactly, exactly. So she had
Okay.
all the artwork. She sent them through as files. I influenced them in Photoshop, putting them in repeat, changing the colors. And once you change the colors, it can look like a completely different design in marbling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it was a really good collaboration because she wouldn't have been able to do that herself, obviously. You really need that background and wallpaper to understand how that works. But
Right.
yeah, it was the first time I've done that, and it was a nice experience. I kind of could lay back a little bit in terms of like the art, even though I felt like I created like thousands of art pieces myself. None of them worked properly,
Hmm.
except for the pebbles. That's one of mine that I created myself. It was clear enough, and I managed to get that to work. But
So was that a really like a very frustrating process because you were trying and it just wasn't
it
working? Like, did
yeah,
you get sort of angry about it, or how did
it
that
was a
affect
bit
you as an
it was a
artist?
bit frustrating because I thought I'd created some that really worked. Took photos of them because a small enough piece of paper I could use my phone. I put them in the computer, blow them up, and I'll be like, no, the clarity's just not there. And if I'm going to do this collection, I want it to look its best. I don't want it to look like, a non-professional did it. I want to look like, someone that knows what they're doing creates this collection. So that's when I started sourcing and looking around for other artists who used the right equipment and had really beautiful, clear artworks that I could use. And that's when I
Gotcha.
came
And
across
so,
her.
so you as you mentioned, you had experience yourself collaborating. Where was it for Magnolia, right? Robin McKendry. She
Yes, I
approached
worked
you to
with
create a
a
collection
collection.
for her, right?
Yes, that's right, and that's sold through Milton and King, and that was great. Like collaborations are can be hard because you have to try and think about what they want, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
always what you create. Sometimes you blow them away, and other times like, oh, that's not quite what I wanted. But it's the designs that you struggle with or what make you grow as an artist. Like
Mm-hmm.
for example, she approached me to create the huge chinoiserie design that she has now. It's all white. It's like and I would never have thought to do that, but it just looks beautiful. It's just like a white shadow chinoiserie on different colored backgrounds, textural backgrounds. And when she asked me to do it, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Like, it's huge. She wanted a 6 drop chinoiserie with like 3 to 4 different trees, birds, everything. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do it with 2 kids at home and locked down in Melbourne? But
Mm.
as I started to do it, I started learning different techniques with the chinoiserie, like Googling how to use the paintbrushes and, um, looking at different silhouettes for birds and trees. And I learnt so much from that. And I never would have thought to do it. I've always loved chinoiserie. Like it's timeless. It's the most beautiful form of wallpaper there ever was. But it's just such a huge deal. I never thought that I'd have time with kids. But because she asked me to do it, I did it. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have come up with the latest collection that I've just done, which is that times, I don't know, 5. It's like 6 designs. So if it wasn't for doing those custom jobs, I wouldn't have been confident. Not that I wasn't confident, but I guess the time frame. I wouldn't have thought I'd have the right amount of time to achieve what I've achieved, especially with kids running around. But I really do appreciate the custom work because it does make you grow as an artist, most definitely.
So that is a good transition towards the next collection coming up. Before I get
Yeah.
to that, though,
Mhm.
so did you find that with that collaboration that you did for Magnolia,
Mhm.
was it the same sort of split in sort of duties and tasks as an artist, or did
No,
you?
I did everything, and
Okay, so you did the
so
art and the digital, all
oh
that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah. So Robin would tell me what she would want. She'd send me a vision board, and then I would come up with ideas and sketches, and she would approve it. And then I'd go to the painting side, and create the design. But before I created the design, because that takes a lot of time on the computer, I'd show her the original artwork and she'd be like, yes, perfect. Go ahead. And then I'd do all the, she'd then want to do the colorways as well. So she'd tell me what colors. She'd even send me color chips to match for the background because Robin, not many people would know in America, but she owns an amazing, amazing interior shop in Brisbane, and she's very well known in Brisbane, and she's has beautiful taste. So it was a real honor working with her. And she did push me, and I learned a lot working with her. So that was the first collection. That was, I don't know what she ended up calling it, but it was very like French Chinese inspired. I think I did like an all over kind of chinoiserie design for her and some stripes and little bits like that. And then she came to me a year later, I think, and asked for the very large chinoiserie, which she has in her shop right now, which just looks so beautiful in the green
It's a
colorway.
beautiful design. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I was very happy how that turned out. And that was very much a collaboration because she would say, I want a really big tree and a little tree, and I want, the birds at the bottom and things like that. So even
How
though
much
I
back and forth
created
was there? Did you send
a lot of,
sort of sketches, or she was just
yes.
run wild
Yeah,
with other?
I sent sketches, and it was quite tricky because Milton and King work mainly with the murals, only 3 drops. And I had to
Mm-hmm.
ask Bryce if we could push it and do 6. But the tricky part was, and this is quite tricky, and this is Robin's amazing mind. She said, how about we do the first drop, 3 drops, and have it been able to just repeat, and then have the next drop of 3 that can fit in with the first one so people can have an extra tree. So my brain was going, oh my God, how am I going to do this? It's not just like one repeat that I have to repeat, it's 2 different designs within one design. But I mean, that's just her brain. It was quite amazing. And Bryce thought it was an amazing idea. So that's what we've come up with, and it works really well.
So do you have that sort of layout in these new ones that are coming out?
I have with the large chinoiserie. It's called Spring Landscape. It's a 6 drop repeat,
Mm-hmm.
and I simply wanted to do that because I don't want the repeat to just repeat too quickly. I wanted it to look like a whole wall of different trees, and then the next
Right.
wall it'll repeat it. I didn't want the same tree to pop up all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
I asked Bryce before I started, I said, can I do one that big? Is that okay? And he's like, no, go for it. That'd be amazing. So I went for it, and I created that first design was a really large landscape chinoiserie. And from that, my favorite tree, and that I repeated and just did an all over for another mural. I like to work big, and I think I don't know if it drives Bryce crazy, but I don't think it's very rare for me to have just one drop repeat. I usually
Mm-hmm.
my designs go over 2 wallpaper drops, or 3, and now 6. So
Less
I
repetitive
obviously,
that way.
yeah, that's repetitive, and it's just, yeah, I like just love working large, I guess. But most of the designs come from that main big landscape that I did for this next collection. Like I've picked the birds out, I've picked the butterflies out of the spring landscape and just done a butterfly design where the butterflies are just fluttering around in a chinoiserie style, which I love doing. Um, it's challenging though. Like, don't think everything comes naturally. I struggle. Like birds sometimes come so naturally, and some days I just can't draw them. I just have to put the pencil down and walk away. Um,
Hmm.
and then it's not relaxing. Like art's not always relaxing for me. Most days it is, but if it's not working, I just have to know, to put the pencil down. And working in this chinoiserie style, it is challenging because you are competing with some of the best companies in the world that do chinoiseries just so effortlessly. They use some of the best artists in China. Like Digonet revived the technique in China and retaught, had people relearn how to do it. And they've got beautiful workshops in China now that do it for them. I don't have that. I've just got myself. So I've had to really keep saying to myself, are you happy with that? Would Digonet do that? You have to, keep saying to yourself, it's easier to do it this way, but just redo it because you always regret it. Once it's up on the wall, you can't change it. So it was challenging, this collection, but I also kept at it, and I'm quite proud of it. It's probably my favorite collection I've ever done. I'm very proud of it.
I'm looking at a picture of the spring landscape now,
Mhm.
as you're talking about it, and it's really
Yeah.
cool to hear you describe it as I'm looking at it, and I'm seeing the birds flying at the very top of what would be,
Mhm.
I guess, top of the panels.
Yeah.
And you were saying that that is sort of a point of frustration for you. Is it just
Mhm.
because, um, like, are you drawing a bird and you're just finding the proportions not right, or the
Yeah,
eyes, or the like,
proportion.
is there a
Yeah,
feature that's not looking right, or what is it
exactly.
that's
Well, you want them to look slightly oriental as well, because that's like the chinoiserie is quite oriental, it's Chinese background. So you want it to look like a certain style, but yeah, you
mm,
also like, it is hard. Birds are really difficult. Like my one of my favorite wallpaper designers, William Morris, he couldn't draw them. He had his friends draw them for him. They are quite tricky. Um, but I feel as though I'm getting them. And it's also about getting the right paper and paintbrushes. Like I had to go buy some beautiful Chinese paintbrushes to get
mm,
the feathers because they're so fine. Um, and I worked on Stonehenge paper, which is what I work on with all my artwork, which still worked really well for the chinoiserie. But lots of people use silk paper, so it's silk on top of paper, built into paper. So the colors just blend so beautifully. I don't have that in Australia. I could not find it anywhere. But also, I'm very allergic to silk, so maybe that was a good thing. If I was painting on silk, I'd probably just come up in hives straight away. So I think I might just stick with paper. But yeah, it is a
well,
huge,
meant to be.
yeah, meant to be. But yeah, it is. This whole chinoiserie collection was a huge learning curve. It really suited my style because I'm quite classic. But yeah, just learning about different ways to hold a paintbrush and let the paint just blend together and let it be, and then how to do the outlines without it being obvious, but making it pop at the same time. And it was good. And social media really helped because lots of people film themselves doing it. So I learned a lot through social media. But it is
Okay.
something I would love one day to actually be taught by a master how to do it, because they just make it look so effortless. And it isn't. It's hard. So I guess practice makes perfect.
It's great hearing you talk like that because, from someone, I'm not an artist. I couldn't draw a stick figure. So
Hmm.
I'm looking at it, and I'm hearing, and hearing your story, and you know going to the type of school you went to, and
Hmm.
going to university, and then all the experience you had at working textile companies, and all the collections you've done so far, to hear that you're still um, learning so much
Oh yeah.
with
And that's
every collection and
yeah.
wanting to be taught, I think is
Hmm.
really, um, it's inspiring because there's a humility in it.
Hmm.
And
Well,
I think that's good for any artist, really. It's a good message for any artist that's trying to do anything in art, I think.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I look at my work a few years ago, and I'm still proud of it, but I know I can grow. I know I can learn and do so much more. And yeah, I try and push myself with every collection to do something I haven't done before. And I think that's what's exciting. If I was just to do the same thing every time and I knew I was good at it, it wouldn't be as exciting. But to push myself and to be really proud of the result after all the hard work, I think that's what makes me want to keep doing it more and more every day.
And you mentioned that, I know we're running out of time soon, so I'll just try to wrap this up. But I just had a couple other questions.
Hmm.
One is, you're talking about when you were creating this, that you had to get certain brushes, more fine brushes, things like
Hmm.
that. On from just like a practical outlook, I guess this is taking it outside of the art a little bit, but just sort of towards the practical. How
Yeah.
much do you find yourself having to spend on either new brushes, or getting the right brushes, and or
Hmm.
getting the right,
You know what's
materials to work with, and replacing
yeah.
what you have, or that kind of thing?
Yeah, look, the paint is expensive. But you don't use much paint when it comes to gouache. You go through a lot of white, so you do have to buy white all the time. Um, I use an Australian company, Art Spectrum, and they gifted me a little bit recently, and that was so lovely because they don't do that. with anyone else, but they said, "Oh, you're so lovely to us. We'll give you a little bit of a gift," and I was so grateful for that. And I try and promote them as much as I can with my work. But paper, yeah, it's very expensive. It's like $12 a sheet.
Mm.
So I buy it sparingly, and I try and I don't doodle on it. I do a sketch on something else, and then I'll know to do how to do the finished artwork on the paper because it is very expensive. Nowhere near as expensive as silk paper, so I'm quite grateful that I haven't been using that because that would cost a lot more. Um, what else? The paintbrushes. Funny you mentioned that. I bought some expensive Chinese paintbrushes from Ecclesleys, which is a really beautiful art shop in Australia. Um, but they were okay. And when I was walking past a $2 shop, I went in to get something, and they had these Chinese paintbrushes because it was like owned by a Chinese family, and they only cost like $2.50 for a pack. They were amazing. So it just shows that you don't have to spend a lot of money. You just have to, know where to go and just experiment, I guess.
Wow. And so how often do you find do you have like let's say do you have a particular brush that you use most of the time? How often are you having to replace these things or what's the lifespan
Um,
of these things?
mm, if you keep them, because it's gouache, it's not oil. Oil can destroy your paintbrushes if you don't clean them properly. With gouache, you just run them under a tap, and as long as you put them back into shape and put their caps on with the Chinese ones, they will be fine for years, I guess. But
Mm.
I with my other paintbrushes before I had the Chinese ones, I'm pretty rough with them, and I let my kids play with them, which is pretty silly because they don't come cheap. I'm just looking at my glass jar full of paintbrushes and they look very disgusting. But yeah, I do keep good care of my Chinese ones. They're wrapped up in like a nice mat, safely put away from the children because they would not know how to use them. They're too soft. They're like you would have seen like Chinese calligraphy painting. They're a bit like that. They hold a lot of paint, but they're very soft. You have to know exactly how to hold them. And children just don't know
Mm.
how to do that. So yeah, stay far away from them. I sort of destroy them. Even though they didn't cost me that much. I do have a few that will cost me maybe $25 each. But it's funny, I don't actually use them that much. I use the $2 ones more.
You do have to take good care of your tools.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. Put everything away at the end of the day, especially with kids. Otherwise they get into it. Upstairs at the
Mm.
moment, actually near my studio, my 2-year-old grabbed a pencil and just drew over all the walls, and we can't get it off. We'll have to repaint. You think lead pencil's safe? You just rub it off. You can't just rub it off. It's really weird. It's very
Huh.
strange. Yeah, it sticks well. If anyone has any advice,
The
please let me
joys of
know.
children.
Yeah, the choice children. Yes, I've just I was um I recently did my front room I've only done used one of my own wallpapers once in my studio, but with the spring landscape, I thought, oh, I just want to do my front room in it. It looks so beautiful. So I've just recently done the front room, which is a spare bedroom, in the spring landscape in the green. No one would know what this looks like yet 'cause it's not released. But my
Hmm.
boys just love going in there because there's like birds and butterflies and they love pointing to it. I'm like, this is great, but let's come in here with your paints or your textures or your crayons because I'll die if you draw all over it. So I have to be really careful, keep the door shut at all times so they don't destroy the wallpaper.
Well, and you're about to have one more in the house that'll add to that chaos. So,
Oh, yes, yes. I don't think we'll be getting much sleep, but I mean, we're used to it, so hopefully we'll be okay. I'm not really worried about the
well,
baby so much. I'm more worried about the older two, dealing with
yeah,
them and having, yeah, it can be tricky.
rambunctious boys.
Yes, yes. Very full on.
Well, I really appreciate you giving me over an hour of your time.
That's
It's been really
okay.
great to dive into your experience and your mental process and all that kind of stuff. It's been really, really fascinating.
Well, that's good.
Hopefully, we can do it again at some point
Yeah.
when you're back in the artistic zone and you're
Yeah,
creating
not
more
fogged by lack of
collections.
sleep. Yeah, exactly. That was lovely talking to you, Chris. I mean, we've talked to each other a lot via email, but it's lovely to hear your voice.